If we came out and said, all right, Russia and China, you want to stockpile gold? We're going to settle trade in Bitcoin. Like, boom.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
Well, probably rat poison squared.
I could care less about Bitcoin. I don't know why. If you're stupid enough to buy it, you'll pay the price for it one day. Governments are going to crush it one day.
My last sort of Bitcoin question to you is, there's a lot of game theory that's playing into this that we're seeing with Russia and with China. CBDCs are going to be emerging more and more. But at the end of the day, if Bitcoin does survive, it does threaten the dollar. I mean, because why would you need the dollar if you have Lightning as a payment rail? And this is, there's no third party that you need to trust. It's this beautiful system based purely on technology that no one can control, no one can manipulate. So, I mean, is it a zero-sum game, or do you see more of a world where it's different kind of reserve assets, like you mentioned? Maybe the dollar is the main currency, but then also you have the BRICS countries that have their currencies. Like, how does this play out with Bitcoin, or do you even think about this?
No, I do. And the game theory is very fascinating because you're right. Like, I remember having a conversation with a venture capitalist out on the West Coast. This had been probably 5 years ago now. And they said something interesting to me, which is that the tech guys have the scalps of all the industries that they've killed or completely disintermediated, right, on their walls. And the one that they have, the great white whale they haven't been able to get has been banking. And control of banking and money is intricately tied with power, with political power. And so you can see anything, you can see why, yeah, it would be a threat. And in particular, and I think this is something that helped me understand Bitcoin once, enough of the Bitcoin community graciously was like I'm a little thick and I'm German by descent, right? So I'm a little stubborn at times. So, but once you understand how they've controlled gold, when you then apply that and realize that it's very difficult to use the same methods that they've controlled gold, which is the unmitigated expansion of paper derivatives, and how Bitcoin is very resistant to that, it hits you like a ton of bricks. You're like, oh my God. And once that hits you, then it's like, okay. And that's part of why I've coined this phrase, or I've used this phrase of Bitcoin's the last functioning smoke detector, that they haven't been able to disable, right? That it's not a bubble, it's the not bubble. It's telling you what's happening. It's been a very good indicator of liquidity, up and down. And so I think it's a threat. I don't know that it necessarily needs to replace the dollar. I don't think that it will, because I think the dollar, I think of it has more of, I mean, you can pay in Bitcoin, but it's one of those things like, once you have the payment rails, but why would you? That doesn't make sense. I mean, you can, but that's like paying in, fractionalizing, beachfront real estate in San Diego. Like, why would you do that? You pay, it's Grisham's Law 101. You pay with the bad currency and you hold the good currency, right? So I think of it as almost like digital beachfront real estate, where I think it threatens more the treasury market. Yes. But the treasury market's already under threat. Like, it's already, foreigners aren't buying enough. Foreign central banks stopped buying treasuries 8 years ago. So, some of the guys that have done, his name's escaping me right now, Jason
Lowry.
Yes, has done excellent, really interesting work around how Bitcoin can be a sovereign asset, of the United States, how it can be, it could really be a huge positive asset for the U.S. if you're forward thinking, like Jason is. And if people haven't seen his work, I'd encourage them to sort of chase that down on the interwebs, so to speak. But I think ultimately the powers that be associated with the sort of the financial side of the U.S. power elites, policymakers, absolutely, I think, see it as a threat. It doesn't have to be. It depends how we could use it. I mean, if we came out and said, all right, Russia and China, you want to stockpile gold? We're going to settle trade in Bitcoin. Like, boom.
Yeah.
Now what? And yeah, yes, it totally blows up the bond market on one front, right? That's going to happen anyway. It's going to happen anyway. It has to, for all the reasons we talked about before. But it seizes the initiative in such a unique, non-linear way for America. We would have an economic boom like we haven't had since the aftermath of World War II. It'd be really something. So it is a game theory. I look at it, play. There's what I would like to happen, and there's what's more likely to happen. Ultimately, it's one of my core holdings. I don't know, I own enough where it makes a difference. It's probably 10% of my liquid net worth, something like that. In terms of holdings, because
were you buying all the way up? Are you among us who bought in the 40, 50, 60 range?
The short answer is yes. I actually sold most of mine last summer.
Oh.
And I just paid down debt. When we go back to that, the senses of when we talked about the bubbles, right? Of just that feeling. So June of 2021, I wrote to my clients. I said, "Listen, I'm selling most of my Bitcoin, and I love it, but I'm looking at it. It's frothy. I'm going to pay down debt, and then I'm going to buy it back." And I would love to say, "Oh, I bought it all back cheap." I didn't. I bought it back. I sold it, paid down debt, and then started buying it back 40, 50, 60. Bought some more. So I'm probably ahead like a little, because I have definitely added on in the 20s range, actually quite a bit. So but I still really like it.
Oh, so interesting. Yeah, we're all in this together. And going back to what you mentioned about the banks, it's like the bankers are the puppet masters of the politicians, and that game theory that's going to play out. It's like the banks stand to actually make a lot of money on this, but at the same time it sort of threatens them. So I don't know, it's going to be really interesting, that tug of war that's going to happen over the next couple of years. What's your biggest question about Bitcoin?
I don't know that I really it's weird to say, because I don't want it to sound like I know everything about it, because I know like a tiny little bit. So it's not that I know so much that I don't have any. I think it's in terms of just my understanding is on the areas that with how I see it and how I use it personally are so simplistic. I just think it is digital beachfront real estate, without the risk of hurricanes and climate change and whatever else and without an insurance payment that goes up every year. And basically I see it as digital gold. And so I continue to learn more and more. I guess if you say, okay, what's the biggest risk or the biggest question is, and it's not about Bitcoin, it's about the politicians. What are they doing with this whole climate change thing that just came out? What's really the goal here? I'd like to think that this is, because you can see there's ways that Bitcoin can be used to optimize the grid, to optimize energy production. And I get that that makes a lot of sense to me and make a lot of sense to you. And unfortunately, we're not running the government. They're flying the sound of, squawk, 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 climate change. Look at all the electricity it's using. And are they going to do something dumb? Again, I don't think they can break it, but that to me is the types of questions more I have, which is more just like, are they going to do something dumb that just creates volatility or confusion, etc., relative to Bitcoin? Not so much that they're going to break it. That's I guess something that's popped in my head recently or that I've read.